Hello, guests and viewers. I wanted to introduce our third podcast here. It's kind of a special show. I'm going to call it the RPO show because we're going to blend the Packer-Eagle game into blending and talking about wine today because we're at a location in Santa Cruz Mountains, which is the home of Clos de la Tech, which my good friend Vito does the marketing here. And in the last show, the last podcast, we superficially introduced Clos de la Tech, and our wine reviewer is probably the biggest wine reviewer in the country. It's my co-host, Rich Ron Show.
Where is Ron?
Ron is in Green Bay, Wisconsin, and why I say he's one of the largest reviewers of wine, he's 6'6", 354 pounds of quivering passion. And when he tasted the wine with Vito, do you think Ron was kind of quivering? What do you think on that?
Well, we did a tasting at Ronnie's house. I kind of miss Ron because of his neatness. We had a lot of wind here today, and that wasn't happening at Ron's house. He had a leaf blower, and he's very OCD and type A. He was
he's not a little. Before they created the clinical diagnosis of OCD clean, which didn't help me in my first marriage, is Ron is literally the cleanest person you've ever seen. So go ahead and a little bit of background.
Yeah, he was following Rich around the whole house because Rich had chocolate chip cookies in his pocket and dropping crumbs everywhere, and Ronnie had to, blow the crumbs away. By the way, Eric Wright's here from the 49ers,
yes.
Our third guest.
Yes.
So Eric, I think we see you down there talking. Please come on up here.
Another 49er.
We got another 49er. But you know what? The Rich and Ron show, I'm normally not here. This is where Ronnie sits. And Ronnie's not here with us. So I think, should we call this the Gray Fox show?
Well, no, I think we call
the Gray Foxes? I kind of call this the Gray. You like that? I like that.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting, too, is having the 49ers here, players, is, my last 2 years at Green Bay, I was fortunate to play with disciples of Bill Walsh, which was Mike Holmgren. So the staff I had was Andy Reid, we had Mike Holmgren, Mariucci, and so then to see an Eric Wright, to have Randy Kirk, and then come back here, it's kind of nice to grow up in the Bay Area. I grew up in Pleasanton, and to have such a presence of NFC division teams that kind of mean a lot to the podcast, and be able to have these gentlemen here today also.
So this podcast travels, as we know. Podcast 1 was at TJ's Highland Steakhouse. It's beautiful prime dry age product. I got a great chef, Michael England. He's back home in Wisconsin. I'm a California guy. I live next to this guy, and you got to keep the cupboard stocked and the refrigerator stocked because any time he wants, he comes in, descends, and does a good job depleting my groceries. We're at Clos de la Tech Winery, and you can see how beautiful it is. The backdrop, we got the Santa Cruz Mountains going out to the Pacific. I work for TJ Rodgers and Velita, managing their winery, which we're at right here. I'm drinking a little Pinot, of course. And this is podcast 3. Podcast 4 is going to be a surprise. Rich and I are working on that, and Ronnie will be back on podcast 4. So thanks for coming out. I know everybody's eating good, drinking good, and enjoying finally the sun coming out. We want to.
So that's, I think when I said I was going to kind of term the show the RPO show, we kind of want to tie the Packers in with kind of what TJ is doing in Oshkosh, Destination Oshkosh, and I was going to kind of, for the viewers, is talk about the term RPO and tie in and blend the RPO for the run-pass option in football and also the TJ Rodgers Pinot option, which we're here, okay? And talk about, in particular, one play for viewers, the Packer disciples, and because we're kind of mourning the loss of the Eagles game. However, to start, and these gentlemen will tell you too, to start in the National Football League and be 3-1 is difficult in the first month. But when you look at the Packers, I'm going to kind of talk about where they're at now and talk about the RPO, is that when you go from having a new coaching staff, it's kind of like going from an Apple operating system to a Droid. And you still might make phone calls, you might do texts, but you have to recalculate and get the reps and be really fluid to be really productive early. And that's kind of what happened with Rodgers. Rodgers had this West Coast offense for 14 years, and now all of a sudden when the new coach comes in, he has to learn the new processes that you would have going from a Mac iPhone to a Droid. And so for them to start off 3-1 is really significant, because everybody seems to be pessimistic because they lost that game. And I think, Vito, one of the things they're talking about why they lost is because they didn't run the ball.
Well, that was evident.
Right. And so when you look at the end of the game, what I'm going to kind of superficially introduce is what the RPO is. What an RPO is it's designed that the offense is in what's called 10 personnel. What is 10 personnel? It's when you have one running back in the backfield and you have a quarterback and you have no tight ends. If you have a tight end, that's called 11 personnel, one tight end, one back. If you have the traditional offense and you have two running backs and one tight end, that's called 21 personnel. And what's happened with the Packers is when the staff from Jacksonville came, they started running the first 3 games about 40 to 50% in 21 personnel with two running backs and a tight end, running the ball and then doing play action pass, okay? And going back to where there's not the safeties and the linebackers can't really read what's going on as much. So what happened in this last game on the RPO play is Rodgers was down on the goal line. Okay, and I'm going to be specific on one play, is that the quarterback has really basic rules, okay? And what they do is when you're in 10 personnel, you have 5 blockers and 1 running back. And so there's a basic progression rule for the quarterback. If there's 5 in the box, and the box is 2 imaginary tight ends to the second level backers, then what the quarterback's supposed to do is give it. Okay, so because we have 5 blockers against 4 because we're reading one of the guys. So it's real simple. 5 blockers, 4, give the ball. If there's 6 in the box, then what you do is you read it now. So he's supposed to read it, which he did. He reads the defensive end. If the defensive end crashes, he runs with the ball. And if there's 7 in the box, he throws a bubble screen. But what happened is Rodgers doesn't do a lot of RPOs. In the middle of the football field, that is the rule, okay? But when you get down to the end zone, what does the defense have? They have the back side of the end zone as defenders. So the safeties are able to play up. So Rodgers did a count number, okay? He can count his Benjis as 50 million, but he had a count mistake when he ran the RPO, and he didn't count 7 guys. There were 5 blockers for 7. And so that's the reason why they had a problem with that RPO, and they basically stopped the play and didn't run the ball. That makes sense.
Coach Moran, the one thing I'm really concerned about is that the Packers are rostering not many running backs. Is that by design? They're down to this guy, Dexter Williams, a rookie. Jamal Williams, who's supposed to be, he's getting better. We don't know the extent of his injury. Rich said it was a temple shot, which is really a bad shot on the side of the head. And then they have this young kid, Danny Vitale. I like him. He's an Italian kid, but he's a fullback. So they're real lean right now. I hope they overcome this, because I don't think you could pass your way into a Super Bowl. That running game, especially in Green Bay late in the season, is vital. So that's my spin on it. But you know what I want to do, Rich? Why don't we bring in one of your guests? We got 3 guys. Why don't you call?
I think let's talk with, I know one of the funnest guys is Randy Kirk.
Okay, Randy, come on up.
Let me
here,
go ahead. Come on up, Randy Kirk.
Let's go.
Come on up.
Pass the ball to you. Have a seat.
All right. Sit down, bud. Sit down. I'm going to give, so when I introduced Randy earlier, I didn't talk about, it wasn't live. So for the viewers, I want to kind of, not superficially, but I would like to introduce Randy. He is a guy who worked his butt off and played 13 years in the National Football League. He played at San Diego State, where I played. He was on the rugby team, okay? And if you know, a lot of rugby guys are fun, okay? Well, Randy is the definition
National
of fun.
championship rugby team.
Is that right?
1987
Nope.
national champs, yeah.
Is that right?
You bet.
I didn't know that. Was that with, were you also
Division
know that
I.
was Bully's son playing there on the team?
No.
Okay. So I didn't know that national championship team.
Yeah.
So Randy then played with the 49ers, played with the Chargers, okay? And he met his lovely wife that's here. I don't know if we can get the cameras on his wife. Is she here? Put her on the spot.
There she is.
They have 6 kids. Can you give us a breakdown on the ages, Randy?
Oh, that's a test, huh? All right, I'm at 12, 14, 17, 18, 20, 21, and 22.
Okay.
Something like that.
And he was a linebacker.
It's nice when sometimes I'm in the odds and in the evens. I could just rip them right out. But I had a couple birthdays, so now I'm a little messed up.
And you know, this is a true story. We were doing a football camp in Bakersfield, California at Garces High School, and Randy was always courteous enough to donate time. And he said he had to leave early. And Randy was not the guy that ever left early, okay? He was usually overserved, okay? And he stayed late.
It
Okay.
takes one to know one.
That's
Yeah,
true.
yeah.
And next thing you know, I call him, and he's up here, and I go, well, how many kids? You know, I know your wife was pregnant back there, and he says, well, we've had 6, Rich.
Yeah.
And he's has a construction business, and he's coaches a football team locally here. Two teams or one?
2 teams. I got a 12-year-old team and a junior varsity high school team.
So I just want him to kind of, for the viewers, explain your career a little bit, and you know what it was like to play for the 49ers, and then I would like to kind of explain a little bit long snapping and especially that. And I'd like to put you on the spot and go, when was the first time you met your wife?
Met my wife
Go
at a
ahead.
country bar in Cincinnati.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
But, no, I started my career. I was undrafted free agent. Went to New York Giants. You know, here I'm. You know, I didn't play a whole lot of college football. I went to junior college, and I didn't start my junior year when I went to San Diego State. I walked on to San Diego State. They gave me a scholarship my senior year. Played. So I'm out there in 1987 with Lawrence Taylor, Harry Carson, Pepper Johnson, all these guys.
I'm not sure who those guys are.
Yeah.
Lawrence Taylor.
So-
Do you have 1 or 2 Lawrence Taylor stories for the viewers?
Oh God, I don't know where we start there, but
Did he go to BYU?
I think so.
Yeah.
Brass pole BYU.
Yeah. But is there anything in particular about him that kind of, in between Harry Carson, guys that were just legends?
Just you know, he made that one. You see in some of the shows, he made a comment about being a crazed dog. That man was a crazed dog and a phenomenal athlete.
Right.
And talk about passion.
So you had the blessing to play with legends like that, but also guys with the 49ers that just loved the game, were really good men. And what was your experience playing with, you know, Montana and you know, the late Dwight Clark and some of the, you know,
I was you know, I wasn't with New York long because Parcells fired me.
Right.
And that was the best thing that ever happened to me.
Can you tell some people what it's like to be fired? They come to you, you're on the edge. You don't know if you're gonna, when they're coming to you, they have to play. Tell us.
It was. I mean, as you see it and hear it, you know, coach wants to see you and bring your playbook.
Right.
So yeah, so they brought me in there, and again, it was the best thing that happened for me because he looked me in the eye and he told me, you know, I thought you had more in you. He goes, I saw more in you, and you know, in the past, and I thought I expected more out of you. And I just didn't see it. And I knew exactly what he was talking about. I did, and that lit a fire under my ass.
So you met your wife in Cincinnati. Do you think it had any influence that you finally had, got a paycheck when she saw you? And did she see that in you?
I think I got better looking. As soon as I got
that.
the check.
Okay. So, go explain a little bit of your years with the 49ers and.
Well, you know what? When I came to the Niners in '96, and that was Dwight Clark was he was the one that brought me in. So
Right.
he's very special in my heart, and it didn't take me long to figure out why the Niners were successful. It was, Eddie D, the way he ran things. It
Right.
was he treated everybody with so much respect. He treated the guys that cleaned our lockers the same way as he treated us. He had the phrase "open door policy" was not a cliche
Right.
for him. I mean, to this day. And the
Right.
Niner family can call Eddie if you need help with anything, and Eddie's going to be there.
One of our teammates, Torrey Nixon, played at San Diego State, and I remember talking to him because we played against him, and I don't know if you remember.
Get my mic.
He actually intercepted. Yeah, we're gonna have Eric Wright come up here, also
Yeah.
the 49ers, and
He
talk.
can
Come on.
speak. He can speak a lot more to them
come
than
on up
Eric
here.
Wright.
We got Eric
Yeah.
Wright, 49ers.
Eric, you got
Come in here.
the.
I don't like the center spot.
Okay.
Uh-oh.
I wanted Eric. I think he was at this game. We were playing in Milwaukee, and one of my best friends, we're actually team captains, and it was Torrey Nixon, and he played with Eric in the backfield. And I asked Torrey if he knew Eric. He was one of my best friends. He speaks very highly of you. And we had this receiver named James Lofton, who was fast. And Torrey in Milwaukee intercepted the ball, and James behind him, and Torrey went 85 yards for a touchdown, and he was a San Diego State Aztec. And so I superficially talked to Torrey, and he spoke very highly. I want to see if Eric could kind of visit and talk about his career and being a 49er and his relationship with TJ. And so go ahead.
Well, going back to Torrey, real smart guy, hard worker, very business savvy. One of the greatest guys on and off the field, and we still keep in contact today. And Torrey's always been a good friend. I remember when Torrey came or got drafted there, he just fit right in.
Yeah.
Me, Tom Homo, and Torrey, our lockers were right there together.
Oh, really?
And we're always studying film together. We still keep in contact today. And right now, Torrey's a banker.
Yeah,
up in,
on Punk Bank.
Yeah, on Punk.
Yeah.
And he's a banker up in Oregon, and he's just always just been a great human being.
And I was really personally with Torrey, I was really glad to see him leave California Bank and Trust because they're actually owned by Zion, which is out of Utah, and we always lost to BYU, which Homo is from.
Yeah.
And that was our nemesis at San Diego State.
Well,
so.
no, 1986 we finally beat them.
Yeah, I know.
First time, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, did you play against Steve Young over there?
I did not.
Okay.
No.
So
You played at Missouri, correct?
I played at Missouri.
So, yeah. Well, I wanted to ask you, when you're a freshman, certain impressions you have of people, and I remember you weren't there in 1980. We played in Missouri, and we had a defensive lineman named Jim Wilkes, and he played 14 years for the Saints, and he had a great game against Missouri. He was hurt his whole college career like Munoz, but we had one. Do you remember playing San Diego State?
Yeah, I remember San Diego State.
Yeah.
When I was a senior, you guys came to our place.
Yeah.
And that was probably one of my best games.
Is that right?
All right.
Interesting.
Was it Mark Burrows?
Mark.
He was the receiver, I think.
Yeah.
Quarterback.
Yeah.
And then I remember I got 3 that day and took 1 in for a touchdown.
Did you? Okay.
Yeah. So that was one of the best games I've ever had. But you guys had a high-powered throwing offense.
Yep.
We had some really good athletes, and it just was.
It's big-time
day
football,
for
though.
us.
Missouri's not.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I was going to talk about. Randy and I went to San Diego State, and TJ went to Ivy League, and there's Dartmouth. And I think Randy will agree. Our fight song at San Diego State, do you still remember it? It was, you can retake the class, but you can't relive the weekend. Is that?
Yeah.
Retake the class.
So,
yeah, that's why Rich and I are on about the 9-year plan.
yeah. Definitely. College, I'm not sure about you gentlemen, but pro football was obviously fun. It was enjoyable. You always want to do it. But didn't the gentlemen you meet and the people you met in college, wasn't that really an experience that it's tough to it's such an intangible value in your lives. Did you feel that way too, Randy?
I did with the team, the college team. And also, I was fortunate too to be able, I think, success breeds success.
Right.
And it's really nice to see when I have reunions with the rugby team as well as the football team.
Right.
We won our championship in the football and we won a national championship in rugby.
Right.
And it's great to get back together with those guys and see the general level of success of all my former teammates. And so, it's really a treat. So.
And I know, Eric, I think I read you run the Alumni Association over at the 49ers, right?
I'm one of the coordinators. Keener Turner's our boss over there. So, like Randy said, it's a really good bond when you have the opportunity to come back on the weekends and see how successful guys have developed, and the kids. And one of the really good things to see is, and you hate to see this one, we're at an age right now where we're moving toward those senior years. So when guys come back, we're in awe to see that guys are coming back.
Right.
And it's a really travesty when one of the fallen guys who we've seen, who hadn't made it back, and guys are falling by the wayside right now.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, my father played with the Giants too. I lost him. He was 57 years old, and he was just a big guy. I think he had high blood pressure and he went off his meds. But you do kind of, there's more awareness. I do think, though, that players these days, the medical advice they get, the more awareness they have, and the families is a lot different. When I got introduced, when I started my rookie year at Green Bay, they would introduce the gentlemen, and they were all walking and limping. And, I don't think they had the medical that some of the players have now. You know what I mean? And I think the players, they don't have, first of all, I'm not sure if these guys are aware of the numbers, but the practice schedule for the NFL now is you can only have 14 padded practices in the first 17 games, okay? And then you can't have double days. So I know these guys would have played 20 years with that. And so I think the players, even though there's injuries, I think they're more protected now. Don't you think? As far as
absolutely. You can't even touch the snapper today. I think I'd probably still be playing.
Explain that to the people. What the snapper? How you can't.
When I'm long snapping or short snapping. Oh, a quick story.
Go ahead.
All right. Short snapping. A lot of people ask, what, some about memory.
Can you explain what short snapping is?
Snapping for a field goal or an extra point. And, and I'm down here. I'm not I'm in there with guys your size,
right.
and the huge defensive linemen. And at the time, they could do whatever they wanted to. They could tee off. They get one guy on each shoulder. They get one guy right on top. We had one guy in particular I played against him for about 4 years, who was absolutely relentless and had one speed. It was full throttle every time, field goal, PAT, anything, and ran right on top of me. I would have cleat marks on my chest, and I was grabbing anything I could grab, anything, face mask, anything, and that guy's right over there. And I haven't seen him for a long time.
Wait a second.
And I love that man right there.
They lined him up.
Yeah, he did tear me up every time. And it was beautiful, too.
He was a holder. Let me tell you about this guy, Greg Hagen, okay?
Uh-oh.
Offensive linemen hold. Okay, we hold. But literally, he played nose guard, and he would grab the center, and he would hold him so hard. And you have what's called combination blocks in offensive line, where 2-on-1. You try to create 2-on-1, and the nose guard position, what Greg plays, is one of the most selfless positions in football, because you're literally taking on two guys, and he would roll in, and you couldn't break his grip. I always thought he would have been a great offensive lineman. So go ahead and I can get you. I can't believe they put him on you.
Oh, every time, and I got my money's worth out of him. I guarantee you.
That's funny.
And every time, boom, big wad up. I mean, I'm lucky that he never blocked one on me. I'm sure he's got a lot in his career, but I took a lot of pride in being able to take a beating from that guy. After every time, lean down, he'd stick his hand out, and he'd say, "Good job, Kirk. Help me up." Dust myself off, get back to the sideline.
Are there any, Eric, people know the Packer 49er rivals? And, I always talk about when this RPO, I introduced the RPO here. James Campen is the offensive line coach for the Packers for 14 years. He's now at the Cleveland Browns. And the big RPO play was Kaepernick against the Packers, and he kept the ball and ran around the end, and big, huge win. What the Packers staff did is they actually went down to Texas A&M for a week and learned how to defend the RPO. Okay, and then Texas A&M came up, and offensive coaches and these gentlemen will tell you, pro football players, they don't care who they learn stuff from. They just want to get better, and they love the game. So that game was always one that kind of changed how to defend the RPO. But I was wondering if you guys have games against the Packers that kind of you could, because we have a lot of Packer fans too, the viewers that kind of stick out to you and during your career, Eric. And
well, my last year in 90, I retired in 91, 92, and I had a groin injury, and I was on IR for a year and a half. And when I came back, that was the game that I came back in Green Bay against the Packers, and I was playing nickel. And
can you explain to the fans about what nickel is?
Nickel is 5 defensive backs out on the field in passing situations. So,
and the reason I brought that up is because we brought a story the first podcast, and they were talking about was how Brett Favre was a quarterback, you all know, and he didn't know what nickel is. He didn't know what a nickel was. He just figured there's still 11 guys out there. So can you believe that Brett Favre came into the Packers and he didn't know what nickel was?
Well, that's amazing.
Hey, he just figured there's 11 guys. It doesn't matter.
11 on 11, and then when you moved a smaller defensive back in for a lineman or
right, that makes it a nickel.
That makes it a nickel. And I lined up on the outside against Sharp.
It's Sterling Sharp.
And I couldn't run as well.
Right.
And that's the reason why he ran a corner pattern on me, scored a touchdown. Ronnie got in my face and said, "Eric, come on, we know we can play better than that. Let's get on it." And that was the first time I could not play a guy like him. Your mind is there, but your feet couldn't go. Your legs couldn't move. And that's where, that was it.
That position, people don't realize the cornerback position is O-lineman, you can just keep playing, but if you lose 1 or 2 steps, it does matter. I kind of always wondered, especially hearing it from somebody who played against Sterling. Sterling was one of the nicest guys, and he bought all the linemen Rolexes when he had 108 catches. But I used to see him bench press in 315 in the weight room. What made him was it his patterns? Was it his strength, his route running? What made him, so good? And when you looked at film and you knew you had to line up, what made Sterling such a good player? Obviously, we have a lot of fans that are Sterling fans.
You mean what made him almost as good as Jerry Rice?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, do you think that's
a little bit too much Green Bay stuff going on here?
do you think he could have been a Jerry Rice if he wouldn't have got hurt?
Well, anytime you have an athlete with the tangibles that you mentioned, strength, power, speed, and can run great patterns.
Right.
And on the back end over there,
right,
when you got a quarterback
right,
that has as you guys know, when you grabbing and holding and you get that quarterback time, I don't care. You could be All-American guy. If he can just sit back there and pad it 2-3 seconds, you can't hold your coverage that long. So eventually, he's going to complete passes. You know, then in today's game, you can't even breathe on the receiver.
You know what?
You can't. He'll catch it. Yeah. Hey, he'll catch 150 passes.
You know, obviously I'm a Packer fan, but LaFleur was talking about all of the holding, and I'm just saying that what I like about what's gone on with this RPO is that before, for the viewers, cornerbacks didn't have to tackle a lot, okay? And they just had to cover, and they'd have to play cover 2, they're on or off. Now what's happened, it seemed like the cornerbacks are playing more man press, they're in on tackles, and it's just gotten so much more physical with the corners because of this man press. And I agree. I think they're trying to get too technical, and I like the battles that are going on out there.
Well, from the standpoint of you can't, and they don't allow the defensive backs. We could really get a physical piece of the guy on the line of scrimmage.
Right.
Today you can't do that.
Yeah.
Okay. Now it's more of an offensive pass throw game.
Right.
If you don't get a good piece, and the guys always have to remember, you do have a guy that can blow the whistle. He's right there on every play.
Right.
So it all depends on where do you get the piece. Are you jamming him in the chest?
Right.
Or you jamming him in the head? So, and that has to be coached and drilled every day at practice when you doing
right.
And then it's a carryover to the game. And then, like you can't run through a guy.
Right.
When we played against our first time where I experienced playing the Packers was in Milwaukee.
Right.
It tripped me out to have both teams on the same side.
I know that is true.
No. I want to be on the same sideline where I can. Hey, if you beat me, I can go over here and I want to fight you and curse you out. I'm just going to reach around.
And we had the infield. We had the Oakland A's infield. I want
to go to your sideline and then, hey, let's get at it. You beat me up and then I got to go look at you. I go way down on the floor of the bench, but that blew me away.
Do you remember the game where Torrey had the interception for the touchdown?
I remember that. Torrey, athletic ability, and we used to call Torrey White Lightning. Right?
Yeah. That's what I'm going to call him from now on, White Lightning.
Hey, that guy could run.
I know.
And Torrey had skills.
Yeah.
So that's my thought of and the scary part, you guys had John Jefferson was there then.
Right.
And then Lofton and those guys and those guys were lighting it up that game.
Did you ever know Mark Lee or Tim Lewis? Those guys.
Number 44.
Yeah. Those guys hit.
Great technique.
Yeah.
Great technique. And one of the other Packers that I played college ball with, he was a fullback, Gary
Ellison.
Gary Ellis.
Yeah.
Yep.
Gary Ellis, yes,
Yep.
31. Yeah, that's interesting. God, I think the only thing is I would like to just spend 5 minutes on the 49ers, where they're at. So I've talked about the Packers, where they're at, and just get you guys' input of where you think the 49ers. Obviously, you got the 49ers, Dallas, and Philly. Just your thoughts on where the 49ers are at, where they're going. I know I've seen their right tackle. I know you lost your left tackle, but what do you? How do you like where the franchise is going right now?
Well, I'll talk about the defense.
Okay.
Defensively, right now in this early part of the season, the guys are really playing hard.
Right.
They're not making in the past. It's been an extensive, long period of time where the fans haven't been accustomed and used to being 3-0.
Right.
And that's a luxury right now.
Right.
And I'm not getting too overzealous.
Right.
Because the seasons are long.
Right.
Right now, the bye week came at a really good time.
Right.
Guys are banged up.
Right.
You lost an offensive guy.
Right.
Guys are banged up.
Right.
You lost the corner, starting
Right.
corner. But, and we talk about that all the time. Man, we went 8 weeks of training camp.
I know, 8.
8 weeks. And now, 14 days? Imagine us going 8 weeks or 14 days. We would have been in every bar in the country right now.
We wouldn't have missed a night.
You talk about night out?
Yeah.
I will tell you, though, when Holmgren came to Green Bay in '92, everyone knew about who had the toughest training camp. You never want to go sign with the Saints because they had nightmares. You never want to play for Parcells. But I always thought, I remember talking to Torrey because it seemed like the 49ers were on the forefront of not beating their players up during the week and then having them fresher on game day. And I specifically remember it when the Vikings played the 49ers for that NFC Championship game. Keith Millard was playing for the Vikings. I remember they were down in Arizona banging it, and Torrey said you guys weren't really practicing, and you guys came out fresh and beat them. Can you explain that, don't you think the 49ers were kind of ahead of their time on knowing how to treat the players?
Well, you just didn't want to go to Chicago, Green Bay, New Orleans, or some of those teams.
Right.
In that 8 week, they used to hit every day on goal
Yeah.
line. And the vet guys, that would wear you down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we really worked when we had to work during the course of early week.
Right.
Then they pulled off and everything. And then the other thing, it was a luxury. It was 100 guys went to training camp.
Right.
So the younger guys got a lot of work. You
Right.
got to develop your players, and that's where all the bump, the bruises, the nagging
Right,
injuries. You can wear those. You can wear those out in training camp, and guess what? Some of these early injuries. It's a ton of injuries right now in the league. That in training camps you got those injuries out and over, and then when the season starts, you had your callus ready to go.
Right.
But it's still made for a long season.
Yeah. A long season is a long 16 games is still a long season, and then what? If you're fortunate and blessed enough, you get the 3 playoff games.
Yeah.
Here's,
Excuse me, guys. You guys are rolling here. And I think, Rich, this has been a mini rant to a maxi rant, but I have someone here that I want to introduce.
Okay.
And you know what's going to add a little flavor to the set, because this is Claudia Garcia. She does it all at Clodagh Tech. No, Eric, you just jump in there.
there you go.
You got to share the mic.
You never have 3 ugly guys when you got a beautiful woman.
Here you go. Share the mic. Claudia. So, Claudia, take it away.
Hi, my name is Claudia, and
Is that a, I'm not.
I've been here at Clodagh Tech for about 16 years now, and this is what I do. I put events together for Valita and TJ. I do a little bit of everything, really, for them. So this is a big deal. We're having a good time here, harvesting the grapes, entertaining ourselves, and enjoying good food and good wine.
It's fantastic. I appreciate the opportunity.
Happy to be here.
Can you tell us a little bit about Vito in his role here?
What should I say? Bad things or good things?
We want you to throw him under the bus a little bit. It's a podcast, so you can say what you want.
Oh, Vito's a great guy. He's been a great addition to the team, that's for sure.
Okay, that's great.
Great to meet everyone, and I had to get back to the party, but it was great meeting you all.
Thank you. Can we add another guest, Vito? Bring Greg Hagen, tell him to put his camera down and
Come on, Greg, where you at?
Eric,
Come on, bring him in.
I think we.
Hey, come on, Greg, since you my kind of guy. I like dirty defensive linemen.
Snuggle up.
Hey,
I think I
hey,
still got some scars on
hey,
me.
you're not doing great work until you
And-
have to know the
and-
intricate parts of being a great defensive lineman, and just get to the quarterback, baby, and plug the hole up.
Sure.
And I want to make sure I just reemphasize this. He was a nose guard for the viewers, and it's the most selfless position in football, in my opinion, because you have guys like Rich and Ron and a center. 3 guys on 1 after him. and he has to have the alertness of a cornerback and the reaction time of an MMA wrestler to redirect, feel pressure and not. And I just can't tell you how, for me playing and going against Greg, to look at the film and just see from where he came from high school to now. And I'm just blessing to have you here. And I'd like you to kind of touch base on your amateur high school career a little bit, and then going to Utah State. He went to Utah State. And then your pro career at Denver, because he played with guys like Mecklenburg, Rulon Jones. And that's about it, Greg. It's really great to have you here.
Thanks. No, it's good to be here, and appreciate all the people showing up and sitting around and listening to us just BS about stuff that, we love. I mean, we've been blessed to play this game, and then to get around in these situations and be able to talk about the people we know and the things we've experienced, and it's good to be here. Thank you, and good to see you. I need to go back to high school as far as, again, Pleasanton, and both Rich and I, we played. We all same year we played, but our careers were overshadowed by Keith Millard, who was
that's true.
Defensive Player of the Year, and he was the same age as us, and we grew up together in Pleasanton. And I didn't really know Rich, though, and that's the funny thing to me. I always, you were telling the story about Foothill High School today, but I always remember playing against this guy my senior year in high school, and I didn't know who you were. And I just remember after the game thinking, you know what, that guy is pretty good. I don't know who he is, but he's pretty good. Because we all knew about Keith Millard.
Right.
Great player, NFL Defensive Player of the Year in 1987. But, again, the thing I remember about Rich was I didn't know him, but I thought, wow, this guy's pretty good.
And I tell you, he brings up Keith Millard, and I probably wasn't the sharpest tool in the shed on this. So I'm sitting in class at Foothill High, and there's this big guy that is 6'5", 230 pounds, and he's across from me. I go, hey, do you play football? He goes, no. He goes, well, he's a soccer player. I go, well, why don't you come out for football? So I talk him into coming out for football. And not only does he go on to be a first-round draft pick, he ends up being what's called a 3 technique, where if you have 4 down linemen, he plays over the guard. And so he plays over me for 9 years in Green Bay.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, it was not a fun day. And so I had to play against him probably 15, 16 times. I talked him into playing football, and I had to play against him. And Keith lives in Pleasanton now, and he is. He's a warm guy, phenomenal Defensive Player of the Year, but he didn't play nose guard.
No. How many sacks did he have against you?
He one for sure. The one game he had 4, and it's because I remember it because we didn't slide into him. Usually we went 3-on-2, and it was in the Metrodome, and definitely I'm not embarrassed to say I gave a couple sacks to Keith. But tell us a little bit about Denver and Mecklenburg and Rulon Jones, and I really want you to talk about. I think you were released your first year at Denver, right?
Yes.
And I want you to talk about what made you make that decision? Because I remember I was having an adult beverage at a tavern off La Jolla Village Drive, and you were coming back for your second year, and you just seemed determined. What made it? I want the viewers to know what changed in your transition to be more determined and to go on and have an all-pro career. He went and became all-pro at a nose guard. That's very relentless, and I've always admired that. And I want you to talk a little bit about I want you to self-promote a little bit.
Sure.
You do. Go ahead.
Okay. My journey, I guess. I mean, I came out of Utah State, and I wasn't drafted. I think it was 84. It might have been the same year as
85, right?
Okay. Well, 84, I went to training camp, undrafted, and I really didn't know what to expect.
Right.
I didn't have high expectations. I was just going to go see what happened. I played, and this is when now they only have 2 cuts in training camp. Well, we had cuts every week, and we were there 6 weeks.
Right.
And I just knew I was going to get cut.
Right.
But I just kept coming every day, whatever.
Right.
And finally, last cut, and as Randy said, you get that call, bring your playbook. It was legit. That's what it was.
Right.
So I was Dan Reeves, and I went in and saw Dan and had to bring my playbook and got released. And they just said, hey, we might bring you back. And that's what they tell everybody, but whatever.
Right.
I just
goodbye, right?
Yeah. So, but I came back the next year and started working out with the team in the off season, and I just got a little stronger. I didn't redshirt in college. So,
right.
I mean, I went 4 straight in college, and then so it was essentially a redshirt year for me. Came back, and I was 4th team Halfway
Right.
through training camp, I'm not going to be there. I'm not going to be there. Just keep playing.
Right.
With about 2 weeks in training camp left, they moved me to second team.
Right.
And I just knew that, hey, if I stay in second team right now, I'm on the squad. So
Right,
there-
right.
I mean, I love the pressure. There was a lot of pressure.
Right, right,
But it worked out. I made the team as a backup.
right.
Come back the next year. So I played that first year, and a lot of guys go places, that might not be right for them.
Right.
Denver was fantastic for me. We had older veteran defensive linemen that I could learn from, learn how to be a pro. Again, Rulon Jones, Reuben Carter was my mentor.
Right.
Great nose tackle, Reuben Carter.
Right.
And Rulon Jones, Barney Chavis was another guy. Barney Chavis, South Carolina State.
Right.
Anyway, so that was really helpful to me. But still, I played 1 year, came back the next year, and we're starting training camp, and there's an article in the newspaper. Who are the 5 guys who are going to have the hardest time making the team? And
Right.
I was one of them.
Right.
So I'm like, well, we'll see. We'll see what happens. And went back and actually ended up being named starter my 3rd week of the 2nd year.
Was that 86?
It was 86, yes. Yes, it was.
Tell for the viewers to travel that process to play the most difficult position and then finally make the roster and then to be voted to the National Football League from the NFC offensive players at 32 teams and vote you into the Pro Bowl. What did go back, what did that feel like to really get that award, which you earned, but you earned it a way that most guys don't, and now, kind of explain that a little bit, what that meant to you. I want to hear
Well,
that.
obviously, go ahead.
Before you guys answer that, time out. First, we'd like to introduce the host of today. And give
There
this
we
guy.
go. Come on over,
He's been
TJ.
a great guy.
Yeah.
He does everything for anybody and everybody. TJ Rodgers.
You can take the mic.
Mr. Green Bay himself.
All right. Well, it is true. There's a beat-up Green Bay helmet here. This is called the concussion maker. Actually, looking at it, and I have several more helmets in my place, and I'm a Green Bay guy. But I got to tell you, when I came to California, Green Bay was, let's say, underwater for a little while.
Yep.
And I came to California as this Montana guy. He's a pretty good quarterback. And then I'm looking at the defense, and I was my wife's employer was the dentist, and he had like 5 49ers for patients. So that's my second team. But I was born in Wisconsin, right? 60 miles from Green Bay. Got to do it. I'm real happy you guys are here today. Honored that you came. What do you guys want to talk about?
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting us to your home and everything. And this guy, I met him through Branna probably about 5-6 years ago when you were at SunPower, and he does the fundraising for his employees, and they donated so much food, so much money for the second harvest. And this guy, he goes beyond giving every year. You have no idea what this guy does for the community.
So I do want to give a plug for Second Harvest Food Bank. Basically, when you start a company, you're poor, your company's poor, you don't have anything to give anybody. And then you make some money, and it's time to give back, as they say. So we supported Second Harvest Food Bank. And the good thing I liked about Second Harvest was that giving money is not what they wanted. They wanted food. So we at the company, we started the deal where, first of all, we did sculptures. So we'd have different buildings, and the teams that have to make, the teams in the building make sculptures, big sculptures, size of this patio, from canned foods and boxes of food and stuff like that. Then we started, you go to a meeting, and it's an important meeting, and if you didn't have 2 cans of food, you couldn't get into the meeting. So right away you learned to keep a box of canned food in your office to give away. And we ended up, by the time we were done, the companies, 1,000 people in Silicon Valley gave 1,000 pounds per year per person. And I got to thank the 49ers, Eric. They would show up for me, right? You drive down North 1st Street in San Jose, you drive by 50 companies. and they'd come to Cyprus, and they'd schmooze and help me out, and that was a big part of it, so I appreciated that a lot.
I wanted to let the viewers know too about the backstory of you being an offensive lineman at Dartmouth, and maybe you can tell the viewers about playing offensive line, not just at Oshkosh but at Dartmouth, and then your first Packer game and a little bit of your affinity to the Packers, and go from there.
So, to me, you hear a lot of stuff about football, the concussions, this unhealthy stuff like that. To me, football, I'm not a football player in the class of these guys up here. Don't get that wrong. But I played football in high school. It was the first time my boss wasn't nice to me. You're in college, and then everybody's nice to you, and you're smart, and you never make a mistake. And you could pile up a car, and they'd say, well, the next time, you might want to think about turning left instead of turning right. and I had this coach, and I screwed something up, and I was laying on the ground, and this coach, 290 pounds, Fred Kooch, looked down at me and says, what the hell are you doing laying down there, Rodgers? And I thought, God, he's being mean to me. So all of a sudden, you're in a place where discipline matters, where having your head together under chaotic conditions. You can have your finger being screwed up, your ankle being screwed up, people hollering at you, and somehow you got to focus on what you've got to do. So we were high school champs 2 years in a row in Wisconsin, and that's a big deal in Wisconsin. Green Bay East, Green Bay West, and Green Bay Southwest are in our league. I actually played, show you how old I am, I played in the field that was called Brown County Stadium. That was 2 years before Curly Lambeau died, and they renamed it Lambeau Field. So to me, football is an important part of my life. Athletics is important, any kind. I'm not just a football guy. I happen to like football way better than any other sport. And I really respect the guys that could play it at the level that these guys have done. And I'm a big fan. And I travel to Green Bay to watch games.
Well, this guy travels, and when Branna told me this years ago, he goes to every Packer home game when they're at home.
So I'd like to thank the guys for coming here. Oh, being a guard. So he forgot. Okay. For those of you not in the football, you see there's two kinds of players. There's the linemen. Those are the tough, in-the-trenches guys that win and lose football games. Then there's the other guys you got to have to play football. That's everybody else. Maybe the quarterback.
Maybe the quarterback.
So I played in the line, and I loved playing in the line. My favorite play, by far, was an inside trap. It's a real simple play. I was a guard.
Right.
And you'd come up to the line, and you weren't blocking straight forward. You were blocking sideways. And I was pretty quick. I was a sprinter. So the ball gets snapped, and a back would come to my hole, so it would look like a back was running at me, except I would turn sideways. And the defensive tackle over there, he's, Meanwhile, I'm coming at him full speed from this direction. So sweetest block in the entire world. And I wasn't that big. I was 200 pounds, but I could level a 230-pound, in those days, a high school tackle. That was my favorite. I like trap block.
The trap. That's what your what do you think of the I know everyone's talking about this last game. We lost, but we're still 3-1 right now, and just want to get your input on what you think for the Packers and for the viewers that aren't here and that will see the podcast back in Green Bay, and tell them a little bit about how you closed LA Tech, and then your opinion of the Packers going forward, and that's it, I think.
So, my relatives are here visiting me, and they actually flew out here so they could get there early Thursday afternoon so we could all watch the game together. So, of course, we had a family tragedy on Thursday night.
Yeah.
And the Philadelphia Eagles reminded us what parity means in the NFL. So the other thing, offensive line again. If you want to ask why the Eagles beat the Packers, there's really one reason: the offensive line in Philadelphia, monsters, fast, mean, and they blew out the Packer defensive line. So every play was the Packer linebackers trying to get the back before he cut one way or the other. So they ran through us. It was offensive line beating us. They won it. We lost it. We'll see them again later in the year. It's bad. I'm 3-1. I'm delighted. Beating the Bears and the Vikings, I'm delighted.
Right. Yeah, it is kind of interesting because you think about Rodgers had 411 yards passing and we lost. And then the Eagles had 160. So you're on point there. So I think if you ever decide to get out of the tech and wine business, if you ever thought about coaching,
well,
offensive coordinator.
I gave a talk yesterday. It was a talk at a libertarian convention, and I talked about Vince Lombardi, and my talk wasn't about the company that I ran, Cypress Semiconductor. It was about what does it take to run a company in Silicon Valley. And the first thing I always do is I show Lombardi's picture and I explain to people who he was, and then I read some quotes from him, and the guy was absolutely right on, and the things he said 40, 50 years ago were dead on today. And he said, I don't give orders. I convince my players that what I'm asking them to do is right. And he goes through and he talks about management. And the bottom line is, if you can get the team to believe in what you're doing by telling them why and convincing them it's the right thing to do, you're going to win games.
Right.
So in that way, he said, being a football coach is no different. In the quote, being football coach is no different than running any other organization, an army, a political a company, a political party. And then he went into what I just said about leading more than running things. So that background, the toughness of getting knocked on your butt and having to get up, that happens all the time in business. Those are important things. I think they'll matter a lot more in the future. I think we're losing a little bit of toughness right now.
Yeah, and I think that does come from not going with the fullback and running the ball a little bit more. I mean, I don't know how much nicer and pleasant it could be to be here at Clos de la Tech, to have three players here, Super Bowl champs, and the 49ers, and all your guests that you were so hospitable to and make us feel comfortable. And I want to say thank you, and I think we're winding this podcast up. And you guys have anything else you want to say too before we do this, Randy? And
I just really appreciate it. And I love the life lessons that football gives, and I love to hear that from you as well. I try to share a lot of it that helped me, and I'd like to share that with my kids, and to hear it from your level. That's awesome.
Well, I replicated my life. I told you the football coach was the first guy who said something complimentary to me. And when I was a CEO, I specialized in that. So you got these prima donna engineers. Oh, I'm real smart. I went to Stanford. So what? I did too. And it's like, okay, you got all this resume. How come you're doing bad engineering? How come your stuff doesn't work? I don't understand that if you're so good. Then you look at the guy, and the guy's looking at you like, whoa, this guy's mean. This guy's not going to just give me credit for walking in the door. I have to perform. And it turns out if you have that attitude as coach/CEO, which is what I was, you can get engineers to sign up the same way football players do.
Just be aware of the Antonio Browns.
Oh, we got a lot of them in Silicon Valley. Oh, the Antonio Browns, they're all over Silicon Valley.
On behalf, thank you for hosting us, and I think that's about it. Is there anything you want to say, Vito?
No, I'm going to say thank you, all, everyone here, and TJ, another fantastic harvest party. Unbelievable food, hospitality, and we had Claudia up here, and she was shy, but we got her up here, and this is a great cast. I think podcast 3 is our best to date.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Guys, there's downstairs we got mariachis, dancers, 5 bars, and 150 feet of food.